technical articles into actual applications. Yeah, and so I figured why not get interested in open source, because I like to think of open source as the way they say, quote unquote, kids play store, because it gives people an opportunity to do so much. And I don't think there's any other industry where you have, I've never heard of like open source medicine. Maybe that would be a bit worrying, but probably there's something there. But tech is one of those unique industries where you can join a company while not really joining them, and that's the beauty of open source. So like Phyllis mentioned, I do have professional experience in marketing, and I made the decision to transition into tech because I wanted a field that I could explore my creativity and not limit myself to one thing, like what I was doing with marketing. And so tech gave me that opportunity. So I'm currently a front-end developer. I'm also contributing to open source, and I also do technical writing as well as speaking on these platforms. So thank you for this. So I'll be sharing my screen just now. Okay, so you can see my screen. Everything is clear.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So when Phyllis approached me to give a talk on open source, at first it was supposed to be contributing to open source as a technical writer, but we decided to expand on the topic because I also wanted to speak to developers. And also to any developer who's also doing technical writing, and vice versa, so that we don't just limit the conversation to writing, because there's so much that you can do as a developer with open source. So welcome to the session. I hope everyone is fine wherever you are. I'm based in Kenya. Phyllis, are you in this Nairobi? Are you in Kenya?
Yes, I'm in Nairobi.
Okay, so it's nice to the Swahili has already started kicking in, but it's nice to have someone else from Kenya. But I'm also seeing we have amazing Nigerian techies, and I hope everyone will have a good time. So like I said, I did transition from marketing and into tech because I wanted a career in something that gives me an opportunity to explore my creativity. And with front-end development, technical writing, and open source, that gives me an opportunity to do so. Someone has a question? Nathaniel, proceed. Nathaniel, you have a question? Or maybe if you have a question, you can post them in the comment section, and then we can talk about it. We can talk about your question. Through open source, I've been privileged enough to contribute to the Jenkins project, to Chaos, to Flowbyte, Medusa, and Novo HQ, among other contributions. So this is the. I like to think this is how conversations about open source are on Twitter. Everyone nowadays is talking about open source. Everyone has a list of 20 or 30 resources on open source. And everyone is saying like, hey, you know what? You can contribute to open source. If you contribute to open source, your career will skyrocket. It will be extremely successful. But it's not everyone, not many people explain what exactly is open source. How do you actually contribute? So I do see that a lot of the resources that you get is, you find someone is just posting the resources, but they're not telling you how exactly do you contribute to open source. So hopefully by the end of this session, it will be much easier for you to start your open source journey. So just a brief overview of what open source is. It's pretty obvious, is that it describes software that's freely available for anyone to use, maintain, and improve. So you can basically, contribute to open source. You can reproduce it on your own project. Um, you can, you can basically use open source, and not just like any closed source software. You can just go to, let's say, some of Microsoft's or Google's products and reproduce them for yourself. No, and that's the beauty of open source. It lets you take well-established, large-scale software systems and use them for your own, and apply them for your own use. So we have many technologies that use open source on a daily basis, and we also use open source on a daily basis frequently. So we have, programming frameworks like Vue.js and Angular. Those are also open source. We have languages like Python and Java. We also have databases that are open source, like PostgreSQL, and also like Redis. They're also open source. And we also have e-commerce platforms like Medusa. I'm sure some people here have interacted with Medusa. And also operating systems like the one that I'm using, which is Linux, and also Mozilla Firefox. So as you can see, the open source ecosystem is not just quote unquote software. You can break it down to many categories, and not just, the blanket term that we give it, that, just contribute to software. But what exactly does it mean? It means that you can contribute to frameworks, you can contribute to an open source language, you can work with an e-commerce platform, you can use an open source database on your project, you can use, open source applications to replicate your applications. You can use open source CMS platforms to manage your content, such and such. So why is it necessary to contribute to open source, or why should you be interested in it? Because, like I said, everyone's always, not everyone, but most people are always talking about open source. But why is it necessary, or why is it a good thing to do it, especially in our current ecosystem in tech? So first and foremost, it's good for the organizations. It helps organizations meet their development goals. So if you notice, a lot of companies, especially tech startups, are going the open source route, because it gives them an opportunity to, to apply as much solutions as they can get from the developer ecosystem, compared to if they were to start as a closed source company. The ideas and solutions to their product would be limited to just the, let's say, developers or the writers, or any tech professionals that they've hired. So that's the beauty of having open source in your organization. It helps you achieve your development goals. It helps you get as many amazing ideas from the tech ecosystem. Also, it's a great way to learn how development teams work, especially if you're getting started in tech, and not just even getting started, even people who are at mid-level. So let's say you're transitioning into tech, or maybe you're a student and you're learning about, you want to gain experience in software development, or technical writing, or even as a UI UX designer, or even in data science. So instead of just waiting for you to be hired by someone, you can actually contribute to open source. So you learn how development teams actually operate. So you get to know what the software architecture looks like. You get to know how the workflows operate. You also get to know, the Git processes. You get to know how to, things like, submitting pull requests, how to merge your contributions to large code bases, how to do code reviews, and even, getting professional help in code reviews. And also you get to learn how to work in a development team. So, and this is something that I came to learn when I was transitioning into tech. So at the beginning, I started learning on my own, But with time, you realize that what you're learning on your own versus being on a team is vastly different. And when you join an open source program or an open source project, you basically move your progress, let's say, from level 1 to level 10, because you're accountable to someone, and you also have projects that you're given projects that contribute to a larger code base. So it's not just your small project that you can just that you can slowly work on without any pressure. No, you get components, you get features that you need to work on within a short period of time, and you need to be accountable to someone else. So it teaches you how to work in a team. Also, it's a fantastic way to network with other tech professionals. I've met amazing people through open source, even like with Chimoney, even with Phyllis. The thing about open source is that, as the word says, it's open. So it's literally open doors. You are welcome, right? So you get to meet people within your area of specialization. You get to interact with companies. You get to learn from other people, and you also get mentored because you can find people who are willing to mentor you on open source, and not just open source, but even in your career progression. You can find amazing people through open source. So I highly encourage for people to start contributing to open source. So I'd like to talk about the challenges that I often see with open source. And these are challenges that I've gotten from people in my DMs, people who are looking to be mentored, or people who are looking for clarification on how to contribute to open source, and things I even see on developer community, as well as personal challenges that I've had when I was starting my contribution journey. So one of the main issues that I experienced was you're told that, yeah, this is an open source project that you can contribute, but when you go to their GitHub, all you're seeing are so many issues, you don't know where to start. And yes, they've given you a contribution guideline, but it doesn't really help you understand how exactly do I pick an issue, what issue needs to be worked on. And this is a major challenge because like I said, you're just given a list, you just see a list of issues. You don't even know whether those are open issues that you can actually work on, or these are just user generated issues. So that's one of the major challenges that people experience. Then another challenge that is not often talked about is that not all open source projects are fully open source. For example, with Free Code Camp, if you just do a quick Google search, you might see that it's open source. But when you actually go to their contributing guidelines, they're going to tell you that it's an open source project, yes, but it has a closed group of contributors, right? And this is not the kind of information that we tend to see with a lot of content around open source. So figuring out which project is actually fully open for people to work on versus, a large open source project that's closed to most people and open to just a few. That's also a challenge that people experience. And then other challenges, of course, which are personal, is in the difficulty in balancing open source projects with your commitments, because probably you have school, you probably have work that you're doing, you also have family commitments and personal commitments. So making time for open source is also a major challenge. Other projects, they also have a challenge of poor documentation. So all they have is just a GitHub repository with no README, with no details on what the project is about, how to reproduce it, how to contribute. They don't have any contributing guidelines. So it's a common challenge that people face, but then again, this can be a great opportunity for you to spearhead a project's documentation. And then another major one is also poor communication from maintainers. So if you go back to point one, where I said that difficulty in balancing open source projects. because it's open source, it's free, and maintainers are also human, and they are people like you and I. They have their work that they're doing, they have their personal projects, they have their lives, they have their commitments. So you might find maybe some open source project is probably like a side hustle. Let me just put it like that. It's like a side hustle, or it's just a side project that someone was working on. And so they don't give it the level of importance that they're giving it to their other projects. So because they're the lead maintainer, they might not be really good at communicating because it's not really a priority to them. But you don't know that yet. So you might jump onto a project hoping that you work on it, but you're not getting clear communication from maintainers. And this is a challenge that I've faced also, where I've wanted to work on a project and I go looking through the issues and I ask the maintainers, is this issue still open? And I don't get any responses. So those are some of the common challenges that you face and that I've also faced. Of course, there are many other challenges, but I'd say these are the main ones that I've encountered and that I've seen in a lot of developer communities. So yeah, so going right into our topic, contributing for developers and technical writers. And the reason why I wanted to cover both, while still separating them in this format, as you can see, is that when it comes to a project, there are different aspects that a developer might handle compared to a technical writer, which might seem obvious, but it's still important to highlight the differences. And also, if you're a developer, you know what exactly you need to work on versus a technical writer. And they'd still know exactly what to work on. So open source contribution for developers, I like to group them in two categories, beginner friendly and advanced. And this goes back to the challenge of, you have too many issues, the project seems complex, you don't know where to start. So there's always beginner friendly areas that you can start with when it comes to open source. Another reason why I have separated them is because you might go into a project headfirst and you want to immediately start building full scale features, you want to build a full stack project, and you've never done open source before, or you've never contributed to any project that's not related to your work. So this was a mistake that I actually made some time back. I wanted to contribute to a project that required me to have Tailwind and TypeScript experience. So I figured, let me use that opportunity to learn Tailwind and TypeScript. I hadn't worked with them before, but then again, it proved to be too intensive at the beginning. So I still managed to complete the project, but if I knew better, I would have picked a beginner friendly issue and then build my way up to more advanced issues. So for beginner friendly projects, I'd recommend that reproduce reproduce or review bug reports, right? So when you go to any GitHub, when you go to any open source GitHub project, under the issues tab, you'll see a list of issues and they each have labels. Of course, not all of them have those labels, but there are some that will say, this is a bug report, or I need help in this particular issue, or it's a good fast issue. So with bug reports, those are really good places to start because let's say with reproducing a bug, what someone might be wanting to know is someone else also experiencing the same issue on their end? And typically they will list the steps on how to reproduce that particular issue, and they will list how to reproduce the issue, and and when you do that, sorry, just a minute, there's an issue with my internet. Please, can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Oh,
And
okay.
that is can too.
Oh, sorry about that. There was a lag with my internet. Just a minute. Let me fix something here. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So with reproducing and reviewing the bug reports, what the person who has raised the issue, they basically want to know, is someone else experiencing the same problem? So because they've given you a list of how to reproduce the issue, you can do it on your local development environment, and then you can report back to them with each step that you took and any issue that you experienced while reproducing the bug report. So that's a small way of starting your open source contribution as a developer, because then you also get to interact with the project, right? You'll get to know how it works. You'll get to know how to reproduce it on your local environment. And yeah, and that's a good way to get started. Another way and a beginner friendly way is to review pull requests. So with pull requests, you'll notice that there's always a format that each organization has for you to successfully submit a pull request. So while you're reviewing pull request, is what you do is you review whether the person who was working on it has actually followed the guidelines, right? Have they listed what they were? Have they listed and linked the issue that they were working on? Have they followed the instructions on how to submit the pull requests? Is their code matching the overall code base? How they've been coding, the format that they've used, and basically that. So it's a good way to also start contributing to open source. Another one is also cleaning up issue pipelines. So especially with large projects, there tends to be a lot of issues that are not resolved, because with large projects, you'll find a project has like over 3,000 issues, right? And the maintainers are not really going through each and every issue, right? So you can start your contribution journey by cleaning up those issues, by checking through the issues, if it's relevant to your skills or if it's relevant to your knowledge. You can either reproduce it, or you can close the issue. You can basically ask the person who posted it whether they're still working on the issue. And if they do not respond, then you can request for that issue to be closed. So they seem very simple ways to start contributing to open source. But the point here is to get you on a system of learning how to contribute to open source on a regular basis, right? And then now, once you get used to that process, you can move on now to advanced ways of contributing to open source. So this is where now you are typically doing what you do in your day-to-day job, right? So here is where you're building new features for an open source platform. You can join ongoing projects and start working on smaller components before the maintainers or the project leads trust you with bigger projects. And that's something that I've encountered, where when you're joining an open source project, they will first give you an onboarding task to see whether you're a good match. And then once you complete those tasks, now you can be given larger projects. So that's a good way to do it. Then also you can create plugins. For example, with Jenkins, I did work on them some time back, and they have an option for developers to create new plugins or to create new versions of the existing plugins. So that's also a good way. Again, you can also refactor code on the pre-existing code base. There's always an opportunity to improve your code, to improve its readability, to improve its functionality. So this is also a good way to contribute to open source. And then you can create an open source version of the popular platforms that we have. So it doesn't have to be something big. It can just be an application that you use in your development process, right? Or it can be a dev tool, or it can be like even something as simple, let's say, as a calendar or a calculator app or any application that you can build, you can make it open source so that anyone can actually use it and contribute to it. Again, you can also collaborate with other developers to create a group open source project. This is something that we are currently doing in my community. So I'm currently in a community called Spacia Tech, and we have an open source project that we are currently building with a small group of developers. So you can, you can meet up with other developers and say, hey, you know what? Why not create an open source, let's say, fintech solution or an open source e-commerce platform? And yeah, that's a good way of contributing to open source. And finally, you can solve a problem that you're currently facing and make it open source. So it can be a bug that you're experiencing with a pre-existing dev tool. So why not solve that problem by creating an open source solution? It could be a social impact issue. Let's say you want to create a platform that solves a day-to-day problem with, day-to-day problems that people face, not just in tech, but, at home or even in school or even in their offices. So you can build such a solution and make it open source. So next we have options for technical writers. So beginner-friendly options, you can create blog content for open source projects. So an example is Medusa. I did work on Medusa a while back. And what they do is they give you titles for what to write on. And I believe they have beginner-friendly blog content titles. Let's say there's some that, they tell you to write tutorials, or others they tell you to write a topic about, developer communities or developer productivity. So those ones are not too complex because they don't involve too much coding, and they can be a good way for you to get into the open source ecosystem. Again, you can make edits on documentation to remove errors, to update code, and also to update the tools that were used in the documentation. For advanced technical writers, advanced options for technical writers. So this is where you update or write documentation for new feature versions, right? And these ones tend to be more detailed because you're writing for developers. It's going to involve coding because you will be showing them how to use that new product or that new version. And with this, the senior technical writers tend to require people to have some technical experience. So again, it ties back to what we are talking about, contributing for developers. So when you have this kind of experience, it's easy for you to now work on version update documentation or new feature release documentation. Another option we have is integration guides. So these are for pre-existing softwares, software tools that integrate new tools into their ecosystem. So so like I mentioned, the skills that you acquire when you're a developer or even when you're a technical writer, it allows you to move easily between both options. So you're not really limited to just open source for developers. You can also contribute to open source as a technical writer, and even a writer can choose to advance to being a developer. So I hope everyone is still paying attention. I don't know if there are any questions. Any questions? You can just be posting questions if you have any of them. And yeah, you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're liking the presentation. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. So I wanted to also present a step-by-step guide to finding issues that you can contribute to. And this is not a guide that I've picked up on Google, right? This is something that I created that has worked for me. that I also haven't seen much elsewhere. So I figured, let me just create my own way of finding issues that I can contribute to. And this has helped me because I've been able to find amazing projects. I've been able to talk to maintainers. I've also met founders for open source projects, and I've gotten to work on some of their projects too. So I'd recommend you try it out. So I'll also do a demo of this step-by-step guide just so you can see how it looks like in an actual GitHub repository. So the first things is I'd recommend is you first go to a project's or an organization's GitHub repository and check if the issues are often updated regularly, right? So there are open source projects, yes. But then again, you'll find that some open source projects were updated 1 month ago or 2 months ago. Personally, I would recommend you first go with the ones that are updated regularly because those ones you will always have, with the ones that are updated regularly, you will always have issues that you can tackle versus the one that they updated their issues like 1 month ago, even if it's popular and even if it's a project that you'd like to work on, it's probably not as active and you will end up wasting your time. So I always like to first check this. Are they updating issues regularly? If yes, then then I'm interested in it. And then secondly, I also check the type of issues that have been raised by taking note of the labels, right? So when you go to the issues tab, there's a filter called labels. And this is where now you can decide, do you want to see issues? Do you want to see documentation issues? Do you want to see bug reports passed? Or do you want to see issues about, new features or feature requests? That kind of thing. And the reason why I think it is important is so that you know, are they issues that are aligned with the skills that you have or what you want to do at that particular time, right? So let's say the kind of labels that you constantly see are bug reports, right? That means those are issues that have been raised by developers just like you, right? And these are issues that they are experiencing in their developer environment. So, in their development environment. So, if your current interest is to find open source projects that you want to build a feature for, that project may not really work for you. Versus if you go to a project and it says that, we need help in that particular issue, or we need designs for that particular issue, or we want new documentation for that particular issue, or it's a good fast issue, or it's an issue related to Hacktoberfest. That lets you know that okay, this is a project that is active, and they're actually looking for contributions from developers. Then, like I said, you filter the labels to your preferences. So the labels, sometimes they come as documentation or docs. Others are labeled as help wanted. Others are labeled as enhancement. So you might find an issue is labeled as documentation, and they're probably asking for someone to write an integration guide. So that lets you know that you can contribute to that project as a technical writer. Another good way to finding issues that you can contribute to is to check the comments tab. So I'll show you where that comments tab is. So why I check that particular tab is because if people are already having conversations about that issue, then the likelihood of you working on it is very low, because that means there's someone who has already started working on it, or there's someone who has already raised that issue and expressed interest to resolve that particular issue. So there's no need for you to waste time on it. But then again, there are others that someone might have raised an issue. There are comments, but then again, they dropped off at some point. So those are what we call stale issues. and you can check to see if it's something that you can restart that conversation so that you can be reassigned that issue to you. But I always say there's no need for you to waste time on those particular issues because there's someone else who's already working on it. Then finally, I also say turn on notifications for issues, right? So this will be sent, you'll be getting notifications to your email address on new issues that have been posted for that particular project. And why it's important is also because there are the really good open source projects are highly competitive and they're highly visible. So everyone around the world, every developer or technical writer will be wanting to work on that particular issue. So turning on notifications just means that you will get first-hand information and you have a higher chance of working on really good issues. So yeah, so you let me know if that is helpful to you. So another thing that I also wanted to tackle. So now you have a step-by-step guide to finding issues, but then again, how do you actually find active open source projects? So not just the ones that you see on Twitter where someone is just like, here are 10 or 20 open source projects that you can contribute to. The next level now is asking yourself, which are the active open source projects? And by active, I mean, the issues are posted on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or even others, they even posted on an hourly basis, right? You also want the kind of projects where it has an active community, and there's active community support so that if you face any issue, if you face any hiccup, when you're working on that particular issue, you can quickly reach out to someone in the community to help you. So the first tip I'd give, which is my favorite, is to find projects with issues created by the company owners or company founders or the lead maintainers or the project leaders, right? So if the issues are often raised by senior team members, it means that you have direct access to the project maintainers. And this is an important one for me because with some of these projects, they are so huge that you never get access to the project maintainers, right? Because they're huge and they know that if they were easily accessible, they'd be getting thousands and thousands of emails per day. So, so with those large scale projects, you often find that even the issues that are generated there, they are issues posted by just developers like you and I, right? So those are issues that they're encountering in their development process, and those are not issues that you can easily start working on because even for them, they are looking to work on those particular issues. But in projects where, let's say, the issues are created by the company founders, you can easily talk to that founder in an issue that they've raised, right? You just go and comment and say, hey, can I work on this particular issue? And if they agree, you can actually now start communicating with them frequently. You can start requesting for more issues to work on, and they will be happy to give you, right? Again, with company founders, it means that the project is still young and the project is still growing. So that means there's going to be plenty of issues for you to also work on in the future. So that's why this is one of my favorite ways to find active projects. So how do you know it's the company owner? So when you go to a particular issue and you check who has commented on it, right? If you check their profile, most times they tend to write, that they are the CEO of that particular company, or they are the lead developer in that company, or they are the senior technical writer for that particular project. So that's a good way to know. Then another way to find active open source projects is to join their open source Slack channels or Discord servers so that you are in the know of new releases. Yeah, because before a company posts particular issues on their GitHub, there's a high chance that they will first announce it within their community that, hey, we have a new product that's coming up. We have a new, we have new features that we are releasing, and we'll be posting the details on GitHub. So right then you can DM the person who's posted them and say, hey, you'd like to work on a couple of issues, or you'd like to work on a particular feature. So that gives you better access to the open source project. Again, you can contribute to open source projects that you use in your workflow. So as a developer or even a technical writer, for whatever, let's say, framework or library that you're using, always ask yourself, is there an open source alternative to what I'm currently using? If there is, you can see how you can integrate it into your development environment. That lets you get a hands-on experience with the product. And then now you can look for any particular issue or bugs that you're experiencing, and then you can suggest, you can now talk to the maintainers of that library or that framework to see whether you can work on that particular issue that you have personally experienced. And then another way to find active open source projects is through platforms like the Linux Foundation. There's one called Ovio. There's also Aviel. These ones, they will let you know whether even the product is, if the platform is active. So like with Ovio, you can see that you can view from the dashboard that a project has been active 10 days ago or 20 days ago. So that lets you know quickly whether you want to contribute to it or not. And then finally, find community active projects. So what I mean by this is that these are open source projects that also have active online communities. So on Twitter, they have a Discord channel, they have a Slack channel, and it's very active and it's very vibrant. That tells you that they are intentional about keeping the open source project, quote unquote, alive. So that means that you will have a lot of issues to work on in the future. You can contribute in a significant way and not just in small ways to just show that you've contributed to open source. So some of the good ones that I know is Layer 5, Jenkins, there's Superbase, there's Novu, HQ, and our very own open source community Africa. So they are a community, yes, but they also often have short-term projects that they sponsor. Like we recently had an open source community Africa, the Nairobi chapter. They built website for She Code Africa Nairobi. So it was a short-term project, but then again, it also gave people a good experience with open source. So yeah, so open source paid opportunities. I know people have been waiting for this. I also have been waiting for it because, again, you also don't just want to spend most of your time just doing quote unquote free work, right? You also want to know, hey, is this work leading anywhere? Can I actually get paid opportunities? Because we need to pay bills. We need to we need to live a good life. So yeah, so there are plenty of open source paid opportunities. And currently we have the Contribution by She Code Africa. And this is one that I actually participated in, and it was amazing. So it's a 3-month open source project, and it's open to ladies only. I'm hoping maybe sometime in the future we'll have a contribution for all genders, but it's obviously because She Code Africa is a women's only community. So they partner with various open source companies like Jenkins and Layer 5, and they provide you with tasks that you complete each and every day. So the stipend for this particular program is $500 for the 3-month period. And how it works, because I've participated in it, is we'd have weekly office hours, we'd have weekly meetings to merge the pull requests, to review any errors that we'd be having in our contribution process. When I was in contribution, I worked with Jenkins, and that gave me a really good experience, and yeah, I got paid for it. So this was a good project. Of course, we have Google Season of Code, and yeah, and it's an open source initiative by Google. So what Google does is it provides sponsorships and grants to open source organizations to build their own software, right? So it's like they're paying open source organizations for them to build whatever features or whatever platforms that they want. So with Google Season of Code, it tends to be extremely competitive because again, they're highly visible. They pay really well. I think most projects, they start from $1,500 and upwards. So it's highly competitive. And they often require people with really good technical experience. So the current Google Season of Code for this year has been closed. However, what you can do is you can start preparing for next year's Google Season of Code. Why? Because in the list of requirements, most of these organizations want to know that you have actually worked with an open source organization or you have contributed to that particular project that you are applying for. So I can highly recommend that you go check out the organizations that were sponsored for this year's Google Season of Code, and then you get in touch with them. You can get in touch with the maintainers so that you can see what kind of issues you can start working on. So it's basically building your portfolio so that by the time next year is coming up, you are ready for the 2024 Google Season of Code. Then we currently have the Google Season of Docs. This is now for the technical writers, and the applications are currently ongoing. And I believe they're closing I believe it's for the technical writers, I believe the applications are opening from mid-May. So you need to start aligning yourself with the Google Season of documentation. So the beauty about uh, Google Season of Docs is that each company has its own requirements. Yeah. So there are some that, let's say, like for one that I had spoken to, they're called a Sync API, and they wanted people to go and work on their API documentation. And their requirement was that you simply just need to be good at writing technical documentation. So you don't necessarily have to have specifically API documentation as long as you're good at technical writing. So there are some that are strict and there are others that are not too strict. And yeah, the pay is also really good. So you can check out this Google Season of Docs. And then again, another way to get paid opportunities is to apply to jobs that favor open source contributions. And I'm sure people have seen this while applying for jobs. A lot of companies are now favoring people with open source experience, right? So not just development, but also in writing. Let's say if you're applying for a technical writing role, right? They'll definitely want to know what kind of work have you done, and also, open source. It will give you it will give you an advantage because it shows that you have experience with contributing to large code bases. You have experience contributing to large documentation and not just writing your basic blog content or articles. So yeah, so open source is proving to be a major advantage for people applying for roles in whichever capacity within the tech ecosystem. Then this is also another tip that I highly recommend, is that you contribute to open source projects that have enterprise divisions. So nowadays, what most companies are doing is they are using the open source route to build their product, right? So they'll start with open source, and then they will slowly start introducing paid features, and then eventually they'll have a fully fledged enterprise division. So this is where you see, like, you go to our website, and they're like, yeah, we have the free option. It's also open source, and then we have the paid option, which you can subscribe per month or you do a yearly subscription. So what happens is when you start contributing to these organizations, you get into their tech ecosystem. And when they have new opportunities, they will definitely consider people within their community or people who have interacted with their products. And when you show that you have experience contributing to those particular products, it puts you at an advantage and gives you a better chance of getting those opportunities. So, yeah, so in summary, um, some of the ways that you can make the most out of your open source adventure. And I choose to call it an adventure because it doesn't need to be a difficult or an unenjoyable experience. You can make it you can make it into something that you actually enjoy and not just something that you need to put on your CV. So yeah, so I'd suggest don't just be a one-time contributor. Um, Pick a project that you can actually scale with and that you can actually grow with, right? So don't just contribute for the sake of, oh, saying that you've contributed. That's not sustainable. And you can easily burn out of contributing to open source, right? So pick something that aligns with your skills, that aligns with your career goals, that aligns even with your interests, right? And see how it can be part of your career journey, and not just that small contribution that you need to make at that particular time. Again, relating to the first point is narrow down your open source projects to those that are relevant to your career. It's not just about your career growth, it's also a great way to make more impactful and significant contributions because, remember, your time is the biggest resource here, it's the biggest gold mine, and you need to give your time to projects that are relevant to your current situation in your life. So why not then use your time to make a significant contribution instead of just doing, let's say, like a documentation edit? It's a good way to start, but don't get stuck there. Start thinking big. Start thinking, do I want to create full stack projects? Do I want to take on a full documentation project and run with it? Do I want to collaborate with other developers to create an open source project? So think big, think impactful, think significant. Um, and then again, work on projects that have active maintainers who are also keen on on their own personal growth. So a company that's also looking to grow means you can grow with them. And then finally, be intentional. Open source is one of those things that if you just do once in a while, it will be it will be just something that you do once in a while because there's no one who's holding you accountable. It's only you who will hold yourself accountable. So be intentional. Don't just be passive. And yeah, try and set aside time for open source. And you can use this time now for discovery. You can use this time to figure out, does this particular project align with my goals? Do I have the skills for this particular project? How do I get started? Things like that. So, yeah, so thank you. I hope we still have everyone who joined the session. And I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to the questions. And yeah, I see there are a number of questions, but over to you, Felix.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I've really learnt a lot.
Yeah.
Although I've like deviated into the maintainer side, there's some things I
Mm-hmm.
needed to learn in open source, but
Yeah.
you've really showed me a lot. And we have three questions actually on the tab, on the
Yeah.
messages tab. So the first
Yeah.
person, that's Hope. Hi Hope. She's asking, can someone work on open source projects as a UI UX designer? And if yes, which projects are there?
Um, mhm. Okay. Yeah, I hope. Yes, you can work as a UI UX designer, and I'll actually link the actual issues that I saw today from layer 5. So you're very lucky. So check out those issues. They're looking for someone to design um, this is by layer 5. They're looking for a visualizer page design. Yeah. So it needs to be interactive. So a UI design is required for a section, of the new mesh map page that will highlight this feature of the visualizer. So yes, you can contribute to open source as a designer. So I'm sorry, that's something that I had not mentioned at the beginning, that yes, open source is not just limited to software development and technical writing. You can contribute as a data science specialist, as Hope, the UI UX designer. You can contribute even as a product manager. Yes, you can. You can also contribute as very many options in tech, right? It's not just technical writing in software development. So yeah, so check out that issue, Hope. And once you go to layer 5's GitHub page, you will see issues that have been labeled. Let me just point you out. Issues that have been labeled as, let's see, yes, as design required, something like that. Just a minute. Yes, so designs required. Yes, you'll see it labeled as issue stroke design required. So talk to whomever who has posted that particular issue and see whether you can collaborate with them. Yeah. So,
Okay. Um, Thank you so much. So I hope your question is answered. Okay. So we have two more questions, and then Oin can come in. So another
mhm,
question is on
okay.
the okay, on the technical writing side, what would be your advice for writer's block?
Oh, Kennedy, that's a very good question. And thank you. Thank you for joining the session. Hey, technical writer's block is a major, major issue that I also face. And I think anyone who's ever done technical writing has faced it. So for me, the way I handle uh, technical writer's block is I first try to do an outline of what needs to be written, right? I don't know if you've done the kind of technical writing where sometimes you're given an outline by the organizations, um, which they expect you to follow. But what I do is I take that outline and I create my own, right? The kind that I can actually follow through with. And then what I do is I write short paragraphs for each of those subtopics, right? So that helps me dump down all the ideas that I have for that particular topic without putting pressure on myself to complete that particular topic at that particular time, right? So it's like a way of just getting rid of the ideas that I currently have, and then as time goes on, I will tackle each project, but I will tackle each topic, but at least I had already kind of created like an outline for each of those topics by doing an ideas dump. I don't know if that makes sense, Kennedy.
Okay. Hi, Kennedy. I hope your question is
Okay, thanks.
answered.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last question is
Yeah.
from
And
Esther.
sorry, Phyllis. Phyllis, sorry, I wanted to add something else about the writer's block. It's also the same with software development, right? The thing that we're always being told, if it's not making sense, just take a break from it, because like you said, it's a writer's block. There's a blockage. You're not getting the ideas that you want. But when you take a break and you do something else, it will remove that block so that ideas can actually start flowing. So, and that's something that I also notice, that whenever I'm having a writer's block or even a code issue that I'm really struggling to resolve and I can't find the answer at that particular time, I give myself a break. Because that time that you're forcing ideas, or you're forcing yourself to write, or you're forcing yourself to code, is you're wasting that time by forcing ideas that are not already there. So take a break, refresh your mind, and you'll definitely see that that block has been cleared by the time you're coming back. So yeah. So go ahead, Phyllis.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm kind of being helped
Yeah.
by the answers too. So the last question from
Okay.
Esther is how can one know the easy or small issues to start contributing to?
Mhm. Okay. I hope the presentation will be available somewhere else. Esther, I think you joined in a bit late. I had covered simple issues that you can start with. So you can check out the recording. I'd covered the beginner-friendly issues that you can contribute to as a developer and also as a technical writer. But since we are tackling your question, um, start with go to our GitHub or go to an open source project GitHub and check their just a minute and check their issues tab, right? So some of them will have a label written good first issue. So that's something that you can easily get started with. And also, if you want to work on something but you feel it's a bit complex, talk to the maintainer and see if they can help you figure it out. So yeah, that's also a good way to start with simpler issues.
Um, yeah,
Philip, over
yeah.
to you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So I think that's all the questions for now. So to everyone who's joined in, if you have any other question, you can still post them on the chat. Right now, I'm going to give the opportunity to one of ambassadors, that is Oyin, and she's going to show you guys if you're interested to contribute to the Chimoney Community project. So right now we are in the content phase, and if you want to contribute either through technical writing, video creation, we still have some software development issues. So if you're also interested in the coding part, then you can also join in. So I'll give her the chance to take you through that session. And yeah, Oin, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Phyllis. Good day, everyone. So I'm going to be sharing my screen to explain how you can contribute to the Chimoney project. Okay. Mm. Okay. So first of all, we have the Chimoney community. So we are currently building the Chimoney community, but while building the Chimoney community, we also have place where we need to add blogs, events, and videos. So if you want to contribute to Chimoney community, rest assured that you can contribute as a developer, as a designer, but I think the designer phase is currently over. But if there are more opportunities, you definitely know, you'll be aware of it. So yeah, we are currently building this particular website, and the blog phase is there, the event session is there, and the video session is there. So I'll be running you through how to contribute to this project as a technical writer and as a developer. Okay, so there's an article already created, already published on our blog, Chimoney Community blog, which is created on Ashnode. So for everybody that would like to contribute as a technical writer, articles are going to be published on this page. So yes, so if you want to contribute articles to the Chimoney community, there are ways to go about it. I'll be sharing links to this article so you can go through it even inside this session is over. So yeah, the first thing you need to do is to join the Chimoney community. So to join Chimoney community, you need to fill in your last name, your first name, and some basic things about you. So while you fill in that particular form, you get access to our Discord channel. So when you get access to the Discord channel, you also get access to our GitHub where this particular project is being hosted. So once you come to the project, this is currently the project, you need to pick a topic of your choice. As you can see, there are a lot of issues already in and and requests being opened, and there are also existing issues. I'm going to go through them for you as a technical writer. So as a technical writer, you don't need to come here and say to close the report, all of those things. How you are going to contribute is basically this way. Once you come to the GitHub repository, you are going to see pick an existing, or you first of all land in here. So once you land in here, you should read documentation, code of conduct, contributing, and then it's split into three phases. So you contribute as a developer, as a technical writer, and as a video content creator. This is currently launching. So if you know you want to contribute to video tutorials, you're currently building a portfolio as a developer advocate, and you would like a channel, a platform to leverage on, then Chimoney is definitely the one for you. So yeah, coming to these issues as a technical writer, you need to come in here and then either pick an existing project from here, or you suggest a new topic. So once you come in here, these are existing project topics already created by the last what's it called, Oktoberfest that we had last year. So we had a lot of contributions where were mostly code. So this is the bank payer API payouts that is already created using React, shipping to that boards, gift card payouts. They are already created, but we need to convert this particular code base into articles. So if you know you want to get on an already created project, you can definitely check out this article. And then for you to contribute, so you need to check out the contributors guidelines, which is basically here. You need to just create a new issue. So to create a new issue, you need to come here. This is the new issue button. And then once you go to your topic, for example, you want to work on maybe the redeem airtime project, then you create a new issue, and then you name it something the redeem airtime. Then you would have the necessary people. You say I at, you're going to see Phyllis. You can say at me, which is only down there. You say I would like to take on this issue. Take on this issue. And then you submit the issue. So once you're done, definitely both this both Phyllis and I will get a notification. And then once this particular project is being approved, so the redeem time, aside from saying you would like to take on this issue, you can post the link to where you saw that particular issue, which is this place, which is here. So you just basically come here and say, okay, reference this particular issue 21. You can copy the link and paste in your description. So once the project has been approved, that you can go on to work on this particular issue, then you come back to this place, which is create an Ashnode account. You go to Ashnode, you create a new account, and then the Chimoney Community blog is being hosted on Ashnode. Then these are style guides you can follow just to guide you to make sure you're not doing something totally different. And then once you're done, you need to edit your article, review it with friends. And there's also a really good feature on Ashnode which I like and I've been making use of. It's called Wit. It's a chatbot or an AI bot. So in case you are having issues constructing a particular outline, you can copy it and paste it on inside that chatbot and tell it to help you rephrase it or to help you rewrite it. So once you're done, you've created your article, you can just copy the what's it called? The preview link on Ashnode, and you come back to this issue that you created and you say, okay, and tag also from myself and Phyllis and say I'm done working on the article and the review. Then you tag the necessary people, which is okay, Felix and myself, and then you comment. So once you've commented, I would also get a notification, and then if we need an editing, we'll definitely keep communicating through the comment section, like, oh, I saw this particular thing, can you rewrite this way? Can you do this way? So once that is completed, it will definitely get published. So the time frame you should give us within 2 to 3 weeks of submitting it. We'll get back to you to edit it, and then it will surely get published. And once it's published, that is no more. You need to keep coming back to your article in case there are questions, answer your questions, reply to comments, and all of those things. So yeah, that is how to contribute as a writer. This link is going to be shared soon, and also the link to join the community, the Chimoney community, so you can have access to this place. So yeah, also as a developer, there are already issues, which is creating this particular website, which has been ongoing for past months now. So we have developers currently working on this. So I think currently open issues, which is Kiiru section implementation, implements the community section. Aside from that, if you would like to work with APIs, which is create a new project with Chimoney API, developers and technical writers are welcome. So for this part, is an open session where you just have to go through Chimoney's API, and then pick a project of your choice and create a project out of it. That was similar to what happened during Oktoberfest, where those projects were being worked on. So in case you're having problem trying to work with Chimoney's API, there's already an article created for this, which is how to get started with Chimoney's API, what you need to do, how to use API's key. So everything has already been created for you. So would definitely like most of the people that join this call, and then you can also open to your friends to also contribute to Chimoney's open source project. So as a developer, to contribute to this project is simple. You just need to first of all identify the issue you want to face. So then you also create any issue like this, and then tag the necessary people. For you to know the people to tag, first of all, through first of all, go through this particular go through the documentation on the first page. So it's going to tell you the people you have to tag Khadija, tag Felix, and developer. So you need to pick an issue, and then once it has been assigned to you, you need to fork the repo. So for you to fork the repository, you just basically come here. This is forked. That's already been forked by 14 people. So you create a new fork and clone the repo using git clone, and then start contributing your own changes or your own beautiful contribution. Then once it's done, you commit your changes and you make a pull request and request for these people to review them. And yeah, that is basically how to contribute as a developer to the as a technical writer first, and also as a developer to the Chimoney community. We are really looking forward to seeing more contributors as we can wait to get the project live, and for you to start seeing your project or your articles being published on a beautiful platform like Chimoney. Thank you very, very much, everyone. And if there's questions, you can ask on the chat or you raise up your hand. Yeah, and that's all from my end. Over to you, Phyllis.
Thank you so much, Oyin. That was a really nice step-by-step guide, and I hope anyone who is new to open source and would like to contribute was really helped by that guide. So if you have any question, then please don't hesitate to ask in the chat or just unmute and ask your question. This is the session for the Q&A before we close today's event. Or any feedback about the session, that would be awesome too.
Okay, so Venice.
Okay. So I guess there's no question then, everything is clear. So if you wish to join our community, there is the form link that I've shared via the chat. So you can join us via the link, and I'll reach out to you via email on the next steps and onboard you to our Discord channel. And yeah, you can now you can then contribute to the open source repo that we have and other initiatives that we have. Awesome. Oyin has also shared another link. If you wish to contribute as a technical writer, then there is the link you can go to. So I guess if there's no question or any clarification needed, then we can close today's event. A very big appreciation to today's speaker, Catherine. I really thank you for creating time to show us the nitty-gritties of open source and how to get started. Most of the people really they really struggle getting started with open source, and most of them try to contribute to the bigger projects the first time and they get frustrated. I'm one of those people. So your session, I wish I had a session like yours when starting out. So I guess I bet all the other people have gained a lot, as I've gained too. And if there's nothing else from everyone, then I think we'll uh, thank you, Joel. Yeah, that's for you, Catherine. I think we'll end the session here.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for attending, and I hope to see you in our next community event. And bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, Phyllis. And thank you for having me. I'm happy that it's helped you. And yeah, it's the same challenges that I had, so I understand where everyone else was starting from. So sometimes it's just you come across solutions and you just think, okay, well, there's no point of me keeping it to myself, and let me
Yeah.
share it with other people. So I hope it has helped everyone else, and I'm glad it has helped you too. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian, too, for
Thank
sharing
you,
your session.
friend.
Bye,
Thank
Catherine.
you,
Bye,
friend. All
everyone.
right, bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.